The 3 Points of Articulation podcast. Break it down time now. We're looking at Wrestlemania 17, just like we did for Wrestlemania 7 in the last episode. We're breaking it down match by match, as widely considered one of the best WrestleManias of all time. First of all, guys, thoughts on this event as a whole, as a youth watching it, if you did. Johnny, what's your remembrance of this?
This was a time where I didn't have Sky or access to watch WWF, so I didn't catch it at the time, unfortunately. But I was into wrestling and stuff, and I watched the Royal Rumble because that was on Channel 4. But no, I didn't watch it. Didn't have the access to view it.
This was my first year of university when this was on, so I was more into having fun, etc., than watching telly and stuff. And obviously, being away from the folks, didn't have Sky or anything like that. So yeah, I don't think I even watched this one live.
This is my first year of last year of primary school, Adam, just to make you feel old. This year, I remember this one was on Sky Sports. I think it was Rumble 2000 was on Channel 4. Rumble 2001, I think, was on, but this was on Sky Sports 1, I believe, not Sky Box Office. And I used to have that illegal cable box. And I remember recording Sky Box Office by accident, not Sky Sports 1. So I had to wait until the Wednesday when they repeated it on Sky Sports before I could get a chance to watch it, which was annoying. But yeah, that was the sort of memory of that as an 11-year-old me watching it. Really good event, big hype for it. Commentary team of JR and Paul Heyman. What do you guys think of them as a whole? Adam, what's your view on those?
I think they worked okay. I mean, I'll go into a bit more detail about Heyman as we go along. But they obviously weren't best mates like Lawler and Ross were. And it was a different dynamic. It didn't last very long, this partnership. It soon petered out. But I quite enjoyed it. I mean, I can look back at it now, like watching it over the past couple of days. I can appreciate quite a lot more of Heyman. You can tell bits where Ross just doesn't rise to Heyman, and there's not the same togetherness as there is with other ones. But yeah, it was okay. They're both knowledgeable people.
I think Heyman did a good job getting the heels over, whereas Lawler might not have done as good a job on that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. Heyman just shouts throughout the whole thing, which I quite like the energy of it. Brings every time you hear Paul Heyman on commentary, it takes me back to that time, which is always good. That sort of invasion angle on there. Right, so dark match wise, we had X Factor, Justin Credible and X Pac with Albert defeating Grandmaster Sex and Steve Blackman. Won't be covering that because I went back and watched it just for a laugh anyway. Just listened to that absolute banging theme tune that X Factor had. Yeah, not much. X Factor.
You wouldn't have listened to it on this show because it didn't have the classic Uncle Cracker lyrics at this point.
Oh, I watched the night after on Raw. I think they had it on that as well.
Or maybe they've like dubbed it in because that was one of the things that I noticed from a review, that it didn't have the Uncle Cracker lyrics at this point. But yeah, absolute banger. Before we get into it, I do have a couple of fun facts. It's the first stadium show since SummerSlam 92 for the WWF. So they're hitting record stuff. And speaking of records, it's the first ever pay-per-view to break 1 million pay-per-view buys.
Big boys.
I think the hype around the whole pay-per-view as a whole was just worth of that, I would have thought. They really did a good job on this from the whole building Austin up throughout 2000.
Yeah, the camera work on the crowd as well was particularly good at the beginning of the show. I don't know if it's because we've been in lockdown and not had any crowds, but it just looked immense as the camera panned around the crowd. It just looked like way above anything you could possibly imagine.
And the flash photography, oh my God, that's a thing from yesterday, really, isn't it? Too many flashes in the crowd, I would say anymore, but, last year or something when there was crowds. Amazing, especially in that TLC match.
So that, the signs would do my head in back then. If you went to go and watch an event and you just have some bloke in front of you with a sign.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. There was thousands and thousands of signs in this one. I thought exactly the same thing when I watched it.
Hopefully that was just in the entrances and stuff, because I usually get told to sit down and stuff during the matches.
Hopefully. Right, so let's start off with Jericho versus Regal for the IC title. Good match opener, good show opener, should we say. Good bit of feud in there as well. I think it all started from Jericho weeing in Regal's tea, remember rightly? One thing I liked about this was, sort of took it back a little bit, was that Regal did his entrance, he come down, and during the entrance they had the little flashback of why this fight was happening and why the story was happening, which I quite liked. I think they don't do it as well now as they used to with that sort of thing.
It's because there's no storylines that build up properly nowadays. So this was one of those storylines that built up properly. It's an iconic moment. Regal's face when he drinks that tea is one of my favorite ever moments in wrestling. There's only Regal that could have pulled that off as well as he did. I was really happy that Regal got this match. Nice showcase at Mania for him. Really good.
You see how Regal's the only person that would pull it off, but you know, the guy from the policeman from Dumb and Dumber. I love that scene. It's obviously where it's come from as well. So
yeah, fair play.
Classic. The match was pretty good. You say it was a bit short, and the finish just seemed a bit flat. But it was hard hitting and some good spots. And yeah, I love a Regal match.
Yeah, it was really good in this one. I think his moves I used to like the Regal cutter back in the day. The Regal stretch was obviously a classic. And up until we did the power of the punch, we put the brass on. He did a knee at one point as well. But overall, for quite a bland character of William Regal, we certainly got the most out of it.
Yeah, I remember thinking back, I didn't think much of him at the time, because my first exposure was in late WCW, where he was used as a bit of a jobber. So it wasn't, shown too well there. And it was only probably until the mid 2000s that he became on my radar as an excellent performer.
I think I was the opposite to that. I absolutely adored him when he came into WWE. I thought his range of characters and his range of emotions that he displayed were absolutely brilliant. So he was a good one for me. Helps that he was from Blackpool, which is near where I grew up. Regal's suplex game in this match was immense, really good. There was a couple of ones where Jericho landed just right. I was a bit, you mentioned the finish. I couldn't work out which version of this it was. So either the story in the match was really good and they stressed the Jericho shoulder injury, and that's why he didn't get the walls on, and that's why he finished with the lion tamer. Or the commentators just did a really good job of covering up at the end why the finish was a bit flat, like you say. So I still haven't quite figured out which one of those it is.
Yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense with the story of the match. You couldn't apply the walls, so it did something else. Works for me. It seemed to come early, out of nowhere. So yeah, that was what I meant, rather than the finisher.
It was a 7-minute match, which I think back then is basically a main event level, isn't it? That's sort of early 2000s run. Yeah, we ready to move on? You got any other tidbits about the match?
Not about the match, so let's move on. Next segment. Oh, my God, Bradshaw absolutely yapping on about absolutely nothing. Nothing that anyone outside of Texas even cares about. He was going on about the things that are happening in the stadium, talking about American football or baseball or some rubbish. Why would we care about this? Hated that segment so much.
Yeah, the whole show was themed about Texas, but that was particularly grating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Taz and the APA with Jacqueline. I think Jacqueline's from Texas as well, isn't she? So it's a big feel-good moment for the crowd because Bradshaw's also from Texas. I used to love Bradshaw's clothesline from hell. It's one of my favourite finishing moves back in the day. So always good to see it, and it's good to see Taz used as he should have been used back then and getting a win. But right to censor were decent. I used to like them as heels. I used to hate them, but looking back at them, I can see their place on the card.
So I'm going to come straight in there and completely disagree with you about Taz. Taz did absolutely nothing in that match. He got destroyed the whole way through until he tagged in the APA. That, for me, was the death line for Taz. It showed that WWE didn't care about him whatsoever. He came in without his kind of towel on his head. He had a very normal entrance, and he got annihilated the whole way through the match. The match was, to be fair, for me, I really enjoyed this match because every single move that happened was really hard hitting. I think that Right to Censor as a group don't get enough credit. I think they were the perfect stable group. They've got a Stevie Richards who wasn't involved in this match anywhere near enough for me, on the microphone, getting cut out at the start straight away. I get it. It was a pop for the crowd, but I wanted some Stevie. And then you've got two people who you would never have imagined in this role, Val Venus and the Godfather, completely changing their personality. The group was put together perfectly, and I really enjoyed this match. I was just disappointed at the amount of action Taz got.
Right. I'm going to agree and disagree with you about Taz in that I agree he was absolutely rubbish in this match and got betrayed as such. He even fell over at one point, didn't he? He fell against the middle rope and fell flat backwards after that. But what I disagree on is that this is what killed him. He was done long before this. Certainly in the year 2000, he was already ruined.
Yeah, the point I was making was just that it's where Taz should be, is winning matches, not getting Raven to help him to beat an old Jerry Lawler. Was my point. He did.
There's no point in winning a match though if you're showcased like he was. There's no.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just poor for our Taz, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I agree about the underrated RTC, Right Censor, a really good group, and Stevie Richards phenomenal on the mic, and did that job perfectly. And to be honest, looking at him when I watched this yesterday, seems to look younger now than he did back then, 20 years ago. I don't know if you've seen him recently.
He's aging well.
He's involved in the DDP yoga thing. He works for DDP and that sort of thing. So he's in phenomenal shape still. And yeah, it just seems to look younger 20 years later.
And one of my biggest gripes with Right to Censor was on SmackDown 2, I think it was, their entrance music. Used to always wake my dad up whilst playing it into the late hours, and used to always hear the alarm over anyone else's. So I had to always try and book to not face them, but lo and behold, in the career mode, I always end up facing one of them. Lovely. So next we got Kane, Raven, and The Big Show and the triple threat hardcore match. Great match, bit of controversy around the middle of the match. I'm sure one of you guys have got a fact on that, have you?
Yeah. Go on then, Adam. You can tell us the fact.
Just that apparently they were a quarter of an inch away from cutting out the power to the whole stadium during this match, is the fact that I've got, where they didn't practice a spot of kind of, they thought they would hit a metal like a mesh and then just bounce straight back off, but there was a little well underneath where the mesh was, and the wheels went into the mesh, and that was where all the main power cables for the stadium were. So they were a quarter of an inch of cutting out the entire power,
as well as ruining the main spot of the match with a chase through the stadium on the golf carts.
Which it was prime 2001. This was, I loved it. Everything, just from throwing Raven through the glass, just to the little golf chase, and yeah, just the referee being involved. It was just a lovely time. You can watch that back. Lots
of walking around though.
Yeah, it made me think of the Edge Orton match from last year's Mania.
Oh, yeah.
I reckon they watched that match before they prepared theirs, because there was quite a lot of similarity with the walking and stuff.
I thought the exact same thing while I was watching it.
They could have done with a golf cart in the Edge Orton match, couldn't they?
And about a quarter of an hour less.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Half an hour less.
But yeah, all in all, I'd say it's a fun match. I think it's one that everyone looks back on now as a fun match. I think Kane's even had a figure made from the match, hasn't he? With the hardcore title based off there. But, the finish was quite good. Big show into the little I don't know what you call it, like a pit, and then the flying elbow drop into there.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought the match was really well put together. Although you wouldn't imagine Raven playing a chicken character, I think it was done quite well because obviously the two other guys were absolutely huge, so he had to kind of play that role. I bet he hated it because, to be honest, it's not his character whatsoever, but he pulled it off and he did really well with it.
Raven hated everything. He was just miserable.
Nevermore. Lovely. So next we've got Eddie Guerrero versus Test, which is the European title. This was a good Eddie Guerrero for me. I quite like the match based off some of the moves that he did, some of the characteristics he had. Test was quite over. I was surprised at how over Test was for this period. Yeah, all in all, I thought it was a relatively decent match for a lower mid-card match at that time.
Not one I've paid too much attention to while watching, but Eddie can get a match out of anyone, really, can't he? And the little spot where Test was stuck in the rope was pretty funny. I'm not sure if it was intentional.
No, it wasn't.
No, there's no way it could, because Eddie Guerrero untied him and then just continued to punch him on the floor. And it's like, well, why don't you just punch him when he was tied up? I remember thinking I was a kid.
Yeah, the match did what it was needed to do. It served a purpose to put the strap on Eddie. Test is very underappreciated, going back to the point that you made. He was well over with the crowd almost his entire career, up until the kind of bit where he joined ECW and stuff. He was really over with the crowd, so he doesn't get the plaudits that he deserves, because people look at his kind of the look of him and think bland straight away, whereas he wasn't. He got the crowd reaction. There was a beautiful moment where he hit a boot on Eddie, and the actual sound of that boot hitting Eddie's head was amazing. I was a bit confused on this one. Maybe you can enlighten me as to why Malenko wasn't out in the first place, because the Radicals were still together, weren't they, by then? So I just didn't understand why he wasn't there.
I think it just was to make the finish. Didn't make any other sense other than that, really.
Yeah, Radicals were.
In that case, it doesn't make any sense, because why have Saturn out with him? Not Malenko, just didn't make sense.
Yeah, the Radicals are still together then, because they appeared the next night on Raw, their 6-man tag. So they were still together.
I guess Benoit was
good. I enjoyed his blonde mustache.
Yeah.
His big old hat. Right, Kurt versus Benoit next. Another thing that they don't do as well these days as they did back then, there was a segment earlier in the show where Kurt was watching a video from SmackDown of him tapping out, not in a match. And he was saying to Edge and Christian, I didn't tap out because it wasn't in a match, doesn't count. And I think that these days, they don't really do that as much with the pay-per-views. They don't really go back and look at previous SmackDowns or show people backstage analysing previous performances and so on. So I quite like that little skit that they had building into the match, and it was a good little storyline going into there. But all in all, I think it was a good 15-minute match from the pair of them.
They're too busy nowadays advertising and having the 24/7 title, which is in between pay-per-views, which is like you say, it's a disappointment. This match was good. I didn't really enjoy the start of this match because Benoit tried to show off his mat wrestling skills, like not professional wrestling skills, whereas I think he would have been better starting in a more technical professional wrestling aspect, because some of the moves that he did, they just weren't fluent enough, because he wasn't experienced in that side of wrestling as much. But the match on the whole was pretty good. I didn't like the finish, but
going back to the little skit with Edge and Christian and Angle watching himself tap out, that was a perfect move for the heel who was playing. It was really good character work, just sets up the story of the match as well. And I kind of disagree in that. I do like that sort of mat wrestling at the beginning. Maybe you think Benoit wasn't good at it or something, but I think it still came across well. I quite enjoyed that, and that's the sort of thing that impresses me, and something I may try and implement in my own style if I'm good enough at it.
Yeah, I think that this is what sets this apart from a lot of manias, is that it had such a blend of different styles. It had the brawling side of things, which we'll come to in a second with the Taker Triple H. It had the hardcore side of things with the hardcore match, and once again the McMahon match we'll come to in a second. And it also had the quick through Bradshaw brawling match again. So I think that was the thing that I quite liked about this pay-per-view was the blend of it, and I think the technical side of things and the wrestling skills from Angle and Benoit really just put themselves aside from the other cards. So that's what I really liked about this card. Have any of you guys got any tidbits about this match?
Not really, but Heyman was pretty good in this match. I think he put it over quite well.
Yeah, definitely. I think he was certainly putting Angle over quite well, and Benoit's skills as well. So props to him on that one. We got China versus Ivory next. Right to censor banned from ringside. China, this the whole neck injury comeback thing from China, wasn't it?
Yeah, this match is awful, completely rubbish. So it starts at the beginning, the hold harness, absolute BS stipulation, unsanctioned match. We've seen a few lately. It doesn't make any sense. If you're going to have these matches or the lights out, anything like that, I don't buy it at all. It's so phony. To be not liable. In fact, I didn't do any research, but on one of the podcasts I listened to, the guy said he did look into it, and regardless of any hold harness or unsanctioned or lights out match, the company is still liable for any injuries that may take place. So even legally, it's complete nonsense.
Yeah, agreeing with what you said, I'm going to say that this was a perfect match. And I do think it was a perfect match. It was perfect for the transition from China, the bulking, I'm going to wrestle men match, to China, I'm going to become the women's champion. I'm going to look different. I'm going to have more of a feminine side to me, but I'm still going to destroy my opponent. Ivory was the perfect choice for opponent. She took all those moves really, really well on the whole. And it was destruction. And that's exactly what was needed while still showing the feminine woman side of China.
Absolutely, massively disagree. This was just a massive China ego fest where she ran down the ring with jazz hands like this, like a jobber, as if she didn't give a crap. She was so unprofessional the whole way through. Just you can't fault Ivory. She did her job perfectly. I'm just, 20 years on, you hear stories about how China just has this ego, massive ego, and you pretty much say that actually was the match that killed the women's division. What happened to the women's belt after that? Gone. Killed it.
Well, that's good. Let's move on to Shane versus Vince. So yeah, it was I think it was 6 nights after Shane bought WCW, which we're recording this on a Saturday, which was yesterday, 20 years ago, which is a good anniversary for it, really. Mick Foley was originally slated to fight Vince, apparently, but Mick Foley turned it down a couple of times, which I can see why. If he's injured, he's enjoying his retirement. Why not? What do you guys think on the whole about the whole saga, the whole soap side of things for this match?
I'm going to throw a couple more tidbits in before we talk about the actual match. There was a rumor about Shawn Michaels being involved in this match in some way, shape, or form, and he was fired 6 days earlier, I believe, for turning up at a conference, like a press conference or some kind of showcase, and he'd had something that he shouldn't have had. And he was very, very out of it, apparently. So as soon as Vince found out what it was, he was fired. WCW were also supposed to be involved in this match, but Sean Stasiak ruined that before the event by, in an interview, telling the people what was actually going to happen. So that, for me, that could be a death nail in WCW from the start. Even the camera work trying to show WCW in that box was awful. They couldn't even do that properly. And, the WCW people didn't know when the cameras were on them, obviously. It was just really silly as far as Stasiak is concerned. And even if he did give it away, they probably still should have done it to give WCW a bit of credibility.
I'm surprised Stasiak even appeared on WWF TV. The amount of mistakes and things he's done in the past. Didn't he get fired because he was recording conversations and things like that? It's just, he seems a bizarre character, but yeah, maybe he does live on. Yeah. But that roster, the WCW roster, was absolutely shocking, wasn't it? Compared to, you know, the stars they had and things like that. I think Chavo Guerrero was probably the biggest name in there.
Yeah, Charlotte and Lance Storm, I think, was in there, but so once again, he was mid card at best. But I think you did get some good things out of the invasion angle. You got RVD and Booker T come over.
Yeah, that's a different matter. We're talking about what happened in WrestleMania 17.
But right there, yeah. So right there was just an absolute horror show, should we say? The people that were actually there. I don't know how they would have fitted into the match because it was already overbooked. I think looking at what happened at the end of the match, how they would have fitted into there. What Sean Stasiak said, it could be. I don't know how they would have fitted in.
As far as the match, I really dislike this match. It's not for me at all. Like you say, it's massively overbooked with the stupid thing with Linda. It's a way to turn Trish face, I guess. Vince is absolutely terrible during this match at giving punishment and at taking punishment. It's just, it's a mess. It's a car crash of a match. And everyone says it's a car crash of a match, but most people say it's a car crash that worked. I don't think it worked.
Who was the MVP of this match?
Linda.
Zombie Linda. She did her job absolutely perfectly, and she got the biggest pop of the whole night almost.
Mm.
When she stood up out of that chair, it was unbelievable. Brilliant.
I remember as a child, Linda standing up. It was it was immense. Just once again the flash photography going off in the background. That's what sticks in my memory is all the flashes kicking off, Linda standing up, and then kicking in the crown jewels. That's always the.
But Vince even managed to ruin that bit because if you watch it, he actually doesn't give Linda a chance to have the time to actually do it, and he gestures to her. He nods down, going, "Do it," basically, and he ruins that bit.
I didn't know that, but yeah, Linda, when she was playing that zombie character, she never moved at all. She did it brilliant. Should have got her on TV more, I think. What I'm saying about the finish, absolutely ruined by Mick Foley. All you see is him gradually move closer and closer to the camera where Vince is going to be hit by the Van Terminator, and he stands right in the way. So they have to change the angle, which made it look not as impressive.
The sound, though, the sound was impressive. That always takes that slap of the trash can being hit as always sticks in my mind. But yeah,
but it was the camera angle was ruined, unfortunately.
The camera angles. Anyone got any other tidbits on this soap opera? A nope opera. So next, from arguably, in some people's opinion, the worst match on the show to the most famous match, in my opinion, on the show is the TLC 2. Edge and Christian, Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys. Absolute spot fest. I loved it as a child. Go back watching it now. I think I love it even more now. Really, really good. What do you guys think about the styles that the three bring to the table and the match as a whole?
It just worked, doesn't it? They did it last year, and they've had other matches. I think they've had 2 or 3 similar matches before this already. So you knew what you were getting. You're going to get a lot of good spots, and most of them excellently executed, especially the Edge spear and Jeff Hardy from the belts, which is replayed over and over. I mean, that spot couldn't have been any better. I enjoyed the match, but I do think I enjoyed the WrestleMania 2000 one better. I think there was too many run-ins, you know, the Later and Spike and Rhino run-ins. It was too much.
Yeah, I completely agree. The other match was better. This one was really good, don't get me wrong, but there was a bit too much involvement in it. Each of them had a story, and I get that, but there wasn't need for as much time as they gave the others. They pretty much gave them half the match, which they didn't need to do. They could have focused on the 6 people in the ring. I think Heyman really, really annoyed me during this match. The amount that he went on about Rhino, especially, was just, it took away from the competitors in the match. I get that Rhino was the defining person in the end of the match, but Heyman just went way, way, way above what he should have in this one. And for Spike as well, Lita was in ECW as well, so it just seemed like he really focused on himself and ECW rather than the actual competitors in the match in this.
I didn't pay attention, but I can agree with you.
I know what you mean. I think as soon as Rhino appeared, it was the Man Beast, and they just literally named where he was from, what weight he was, what height he was, and all of his credentials within 30 seconds. So, and the reason I like this match so much, or this series of matches, so the Triangle Ladder from Mania 2000, the TLC from SummerSlam, and this one, is I think Edge and Christian won all 3. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. It was obviously they had the Hardy Boys being the risk takers, you had the Dudley Boys being the brawlers and the lunatics, basically, when it comes to the fighting, and then Edge and Christian as the intelligence side of things. So I think that it made sense to have Edge and Christian win all 3 because the intelligence overall prevails, isn't it? So I think that's why I quite liked the dynamics of it and having Edge and Christian as the winners for all 3 matches, really.
Yeah, point. I've got to say, when I'm watching it back, at the time, this felt really special. Something that was completely different to what you see, or what you're seeing at the time. Watching it 28 years later, we get matches like this almost every month or every 2 months or so, where it's like a big ladder match with loads of crazy spots or things like that. So it over time, it's become just so blasé that we're going to see all these sort of big death-defying moves through tables and things that it's almost become numb to it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's the kind of same thing that if a kid these days watched Shawn Michaels raise Ramon in the first ladder match, they'd be like, shrug shoulders.
Yeah, definitely. It's shame, really, but I mean, it's good that it's transpiring away to the current day matches, but it just loses that bit of magic, doesn't it? But I think this match still holds up, in my opinion, though.
Oh yeah, it definitely holds up. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying it doesn't feel special anymore. Figure-wise, I hope we can get the Edge from this match, because I think it will make a cracking figure with the purple pants and the purple duster. Looks really cool, and the glasses, and it'll match the Christian that's already out. I know we got a basic, but nobody wants that.
I think this was definitely a star-making performance for Edge. I think this is when I first started to see him as like a star, because I think after this he then went on to, a few months down the line, a singles career. So I think, this is definitely a making moment for Edge.
Yeah, it might have been when Lita first had her eyes on Edge as well, because what did JR mention when she first entered the ring? She's jerking Edge off. She's jerking Edge off. Bit of a precursor to what was to come.
Cursor was right in that one.
Spike Dudley got his front 2 teeth knocked out in this one as well, by Jeff Hardy's swanton.
Ouch. That swanton. Never mind through the table.
The spot was really nice off the ladder onto Bubba, which was really good. So I think he only caught him with like the back of his neck, but the table still broke in a perfect way, which I really liked about Attitude Era.
I think that was the spot that made me think about what I just said about it becoming. Because I remember at the time thinking, wow, that was the best thing I've ever seen. But now I've watched it again. I've seen that 20 times in the last 20 years. So it's become not special.
If you go back and watch Rumble 2000, the Hardys versus the Dudleys in that, the table match they had, I think that still holds up more so than the TLC match. If you go back and watch, because I don't think they do table matches like that these days, where it's elimination. So that was really good. So if you get a chance, go back and tuck into that one.
Yeah, just to confirm, I'm not saying it doesn't hold up.
No, but give it Battle Royal time. So we have a look one by one for the participants of the match. So we've got the Bushwhackers, Luke and Butch, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, Doink the Clown, Nikolai Volkov, Tugboat the Goon, Earthquake, Gobbledygooker, Brother Love, Michael Hayes, One Man Gang, Kamala with Harvey Whippleman, Kimchi, Jim Cornette, Reaper Man, and Sergeant Slaughter. What a lineup! What a squad! Before we get into any bits for this, guys, you got any tidbits for me, fact wise?
I'll go. Yes, so there was a few people that were meant to be in who were either declined or got told not to come. The Honky Tonk Man and King Kong Bundy declined. Corporal Kirshner was supposed to be in it and was advertised. He was actually in one of the match graphics, but never materialized. I'm not sure why. And Gilbert was also meant to be in it, but because of the acquisition of WCW, they didn't want to think that Goldberg was going to be coming in anytime soon, so he never got in the match.
Yeah, also Akeem was supposed to be in rather than One Man Gang, but One Man Gang, but he was too small basically to fit into the Akeem costume, so we missed out there.
Which is the opposite of the Iron Sheik, who was too big for his outfit and had to. And his belt was even too big, so he had to put tape around his waist so his pants stayed on. Bless him.
Yeah, so all in all, it was very sluggish, this match, as you'd expect from veterans of yesteryear, even for back then. Iron Sheik was just waddling around the ring, wasn't he? It was very, very strange. On the whole, what's your guys' views on this?
It was just an entrance, really, wasn't it? You wanted to see the guys come out and wave for the crowd and maybe do a couple of the gestures and stuff. It was never about the actual match. It was also hugely a lot to do with Mean Gene and Bobby Heenan, who were on commentary. And Bobby Heenan famously did some cracking lines. Most notably, it'll be WrestleMania 38 by the time the Iron Sheik gets to the ring.
Yeah, I really liked it. Obviously, they didn't have the same chemistry as Heenan and Gorilla, but it was still really good. It was what it was. And the only thing I was disappointed from a personal aspect is that Tugboat went out in less than a minute, and there was no interaction between Tugboat and Earthquake, which I would have really liked to see.
I imagine they just got told to get it over and done with as soon as possible. It was mostly just everyone helping each other over the top rope, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, you had to make way for a Limp Bizkit concert, which was coming up, I imagine, didn't they? So yeah, I think all in all, the match is very sluggish. Iron Sheik, why he won is I'm not sure why they put him over. I think Slaughter would have been the obvious. Oh, hands up!
Why.
What have you got there?
One is because he was never going over that top rope. He couldn't take a bump. So the only way to avoid that was have him win the match.
I set that up for you there, didn't I?
Literally, the only way he won is because he wasn't going over that top rope physically.
I think his trousers could have took it.
I do remember at the time or around the time being very annoyed that he won. The younger version of me.
Yeah. I mean, if he could go over the top rope, who do you think was probably the best to win it?
Slaughter.
Yeah, probably is the biggest name in it, I would say.
Yeah. It would have to be. I think he's the only former world champion there.
Apart from Sheik.
Cheeky baby.
Yeah, sorry, the only other world champion there. Sorry, so yeah, no one else comes. Yeah, I mean, Slaughter. I mean, I'm surprised Brother Love lasted so long in the match. Yeah. But yeah, I think Slaughter would have been. I think obviously he got the big finish at the end, didn't he? Where he put the Sheik in there.
I suppose that was what they could only really do, get a bit of heat back at the end.
Either that or they treat it like a Divas Battle Royal and they can go through the ropes would have been the other option.
I don't even think the Sheik could manage that.
Right, so yeah, from those legends, let's move on to another pair of legends. So we got Taker versus Triple H. Once again, this is the most Attitude Era match I've ever watched. It was just had everything. It had Undertaker dropping an elbow drop on the referee, and he was unconscious for 10 plus minutes. Use that as your finishing move. Undertaker, because that is spectacular. Fighting in the crowd, it had literally everything you could possibly want from an Attitude Era match. I really liked it watching it back. What do you guys think, Adam? What's your views?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of both of these competitors at the time, to be honest with you. But the match was one of the better ones of this. I think the other Triple H Taker match at Mania is the one that they go on and on and on and on about, and this one was better. But like you say, it was a spot fest. It had the old onto the almost carpeted, the choke slam onto the carpeted bit.
It was a match.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, that bit was actually a mattress, and the camera should not have picked up on it. It was a poor camera angle to choose because it just exposed it completely. I'm going to drop back to the beginning before the match started and the Triple H entrance because it was absolutely hilarious. Then can't remember the words for the Triple H's entrance theme, so he just sings any old crap that sounds like it. If you want to go back and listen to it, it's so funny. Honestly, it just sings all the wrong lyrics and stuff, and yeah, I laughed me back off at that. Yes, so
Was it at this time? I think I would have had WWF Volume 4 music, which had I'm pretty sure I had the Triple H theme on there. So I don't know every single word. So I think it would have, a lot of people would have back then. So it must be a major slip up. I didn't even notice that myself, but I think a lot of kids would have noticed that back then.
You probably just went and say, "I've got this. I wrote this song. I know what I'm doing." Just
no, nope. You don't.
Peter I am the game all the time.
Oh, he is. One thing I'll point out as well before we tuck into this match is Triple H, how at this point, because I watched this and I went back and watched a few Raws after WrestleMania 17. And I think if you look at Triple H, and he can literally turn heel face as many times as he wanted to, because I think he still got that pop. The night after on Raw when he came out, he had a massive pop. He was wearing his denim jacket and so on. And I think that it's such a compliment to Triple H and what he used to do us do back then, because he was probably the best heel we've had, I'd say, of all time.
Yeah, I agree that you can turn it on and off like the heel and babyface, and the crowd were into it either way. So, yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if he's the best heel of all time or anything, but he certainly had that ability to do so. I do wonder the pop on the next night was more to do with Austin than it was with Triple H.
It was.
So that's just going into the future. This match, yes, that referee bump was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know why this wasn't just a Paul's Count Anywhere or a street fight type deal. I guess it was to make the main event a bit more special with it being no DQ. But if they're going to do that match, make it a no DQ, because the ref bump made no sense.
Yeah.
I think it was just over 10 minutes he was down, which I don't take as a big lad, but that's just taking the biscuit a bit, isn't it?
Initially scheduled, they wanted, it wasn't scheduled, but they wanted Triple H Tyson apparently instead of this match. But Mike Tyson turned out way too expensive.
I've never heard that one, I've got to admit.
The Triple H probably lost that one as well. Right, should we move on to the big one?
Michelle?
Yeah.
So after a little prelude from Limp Bizkit singing My Way, and the full video package, which was just fantastic, wasn't it? The whole package on there. The whole program of sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
You could say that as best video package of all time, really. The music and the whole build up and things like that. It was just they made it seem very, very special, and it was really well done.
I'll tell you what, I think watching it back, having the whole lyrics to My Way, and then what happens at the end of the match just makes complete sense. I don't know whether it was just a coincidence or whether it was poetry in motion, but I think that's sort of what always sticks in my mind is he's going to do it his way, and his way is what happened at the end of the match. So I think that sort of always reminds me as a kid of that, the heel turn and so on. So, but yeah, the package wise, I think it was just the whole going through 2000 with the car accident and when he got run over and what happened throughout that. and then just having the redemption, winning the Rumble, and then leading up to this moment where, I mean, let's be honest, The Rock was over as hell in this. He was fantastic in this match as well. So yeah, guys, any tidbits on this match before we tuck into it?
The only thing I've got is that apparently, I don't know how much truth there is, but Austin wanted to change the finish midway through this match because he realized how over he actually was during this match due to the immense crowd that they had. And he almost pulled an audible to try and change it into him not making the heel turn, which in the long run, I don't know, that might have been better.
Yeah, it's certainly true. He did a watch along on his podcast with this match, and he said that was going